All right, so we're going to go through some marketing thoughts. It's probably end up being a two-part lesson. So in this first section, we're going to deal with some of the marketing issues related to how you build your page in terms of making sure that you've got the right content on your page, and then in part two of this lesson, we'll look at some specific marketing strategies. Because the truth is, if you're not generating traffic to your business in some way, I mean, people are just never going to find you. There's just too much out there on the internet, and too many other competing businesses in the same industry that you're in who are doing things to drive traffic to their site, that if you're not doing something, the chances of you finding success are minimal. So kind of the process that we've been following for this course is, build it correct, right? Then begin to apply yourself to marketing so you've got traffic coming, and then we've also got a lesson next week that we're going to look at for order fulfillment, right? So what do you do once you start getting these orders coming in, right? Okay, so we're going to go through this one. The first thing, it may seem like a simple thing, but it's actually really not. It's very important. Is your URL. Your URL. A lot of people call it just the domain name, right? So it's the thing you type in the the www.floridauniversityofministry.com or www.floridaum.com, whatever your domain name is, right? ESPN.com. So that domain name, that's your URL, what they type in to get to your page. Now, the reason that that's important is because, if you don't choose something that's easy to remember and easy to type, then you'll have a hard time getting people to your page, because if they misspell a word, so if you've got some really complicated word, you wouldn't want www.Sean's expository preaching for exceptional pastors to be.com, right? Because first of all, you got a few words there that are going to be hard to type. Second of all, that's going to be really long. Third, they're going to have a hard time remembering it, right? So, I mean, that's obviously an exaggerated thing, because we tried it and it didn't work. So we know that no, I'm just kidding. But clearly that type of thing doesn't work. So that's the extreme. But thinking through the importance of your domain name is really key, because it's got to be it's got to blend a few things. It's got to be catchy, right? It's got to, be somewhat interesting, if you can. You don't want it to be so vague that nobody knows what it is. It should somehow convey what it is, if possible, right? If it's just letters, so www.usbglf.com, that's awful, because, first of all, who's going to remember that many letters? And then second of all, there's nothing there to make a connection in your mind about what those letters even represent, right? So when you're creating your domain name, it's important that you want to have, like a key phrase, perhaps, because that is one of the things that many search engines look at, is the domain name itself when they're doing the SEO, search engine optimization. When they're looking for web pages to pull up when somebody does a search, domain name is something that most of them look at, right? So if you could get a key phrase in there somewhere, Sean's Tools, right? So that gets the word tools in my domain name, and that gives me an extra kind of thing that if people search for tools, then I've kind of got an extra matching word in there just from my domain name, right? So creating something that's going to work, and then so you've got after that you also got to figure out what your is it going to be a .com, .net? They got all kinds of different ones out now, Probably the most important thing is just sticking with a .com, But most of the time now, whenever you buy one for like an extra 15 or 20 bucks or something, they often sell like a package where you can get whatever it is you're choosing as your domain name in .com. You can also get like 10 other, .net, .co, all these other different ones, to keep somebody else from doing the exact same name as yours, to keep somebody from becoming Sean'sTools.net, and I'm Sean'sTools.com. I might want to buy all of them that are available, and even if I'm only using the one, it keeps somebody else from making something very similar to mine and kind of steering traffic away from my site. And I've seen that quite a bit. I know with the FAFSA that there's a free application for federal student aid. Whenever you're getting a student loan, you have to be very careful that you do FAFSA.gov, because if you do FAFSA.com, that takes you to a website that doesn't have anything to do with the government's webpage. Right? And it's not the actual government thing. So you got to make sure you pay attention to those, subject, the headings there, and make sure that you get the right one. Right. All right. So beyond just getting the domain name right, you want to have a recognizable logo, perhaps. Right. That kind of falls under marketing. That when you make your logo, right, particularly for internet things, there's so many different forms of communication that you're going to have, like emails, newsletters, blogs, Facebook page, your website, all kinds of different places, ads that you're going to do on other people's pages and stuff. It's really important that you have a recognizable logo. Right? Now, the most important thing with the logo, first of all, it needs to be simple, easily recognizable. Right? You don't want a whole bunch of text. You don't want a paragraph in your logo. But you may want the name of your company. I think sometimes people are too presumptuous and they just put a picture or something up there, some graphic thing that they design that's their logo. But most people may not know what that is, because some companies can get away with that if they're massive, because everybody recognizes it. They've got brand recognition. Coca-Cola could put just the picture of its bottle up there and you would know exactly who it is because they've got brand recognition. But your company can't most likely pull that off unless you're a Coke executive taking a class with us. So what you would want to do, and if that is the case, when you become an alumni, we'd appreciate your donations. But for all of you non-Coke executives, what you want to do is make sure that your logo has at least some text. The name of your company, maybe a slogan if it's not too long, too wordy, and then a recognizable logo, and it needs to capture your colors, and your colors need to be well thought out. My wife and I, we have a supplement brand for people with fibromyalgia that we put together, and we did a lot of research on the colors, for supplements and for health industry things, and so we settled on a particular color pattern that works really well. But it took us a little bit of research. We went back in and figured out what does each color kind of convey, and when you put it together the way that we did, it really kind of grabs your attention. It kind of conveys really what we wanted it to, but the reason that it did that is because my wife went back through and did research on the different colors to figure out what should be our colors. So we didn't come into it having the colors try and be like some representation of our style, right? So for instance, like when you buy a car, you may pick a color that you feel represents you, something that you like to look at, right? But when we're doing something for business, it doesn't matter what I like. I went back in and looked at what colors fit with this industry, right? And which ones have the most success for the industry that we're trying to get in, right? And so, because it's not about capturing, representing you per se. Really, I mean, you could go that route, but for me, the more important thing was does it connect with the customer, right? Um, okay, so the logo needs to be well thought out, nice, simple, the right colors, minimal text, and then the last thing is you have to create a good file that has this in it, right? So, because you're going to use it on your emails, you're going to use it on your Facebook page, you're going to use it on your website, you're going to use it, on your business cards, you're going to use it, anywhere that you can. You're going to use this, and so you want to be able to compress this down to a small size, because what you don't want, same thing with the photos that you put on your webpage, you don't want your logo to be some big file size thing that when you send somebody an email it takes forever to load up. Their computer shuts down while they're trying to open up your file or something, or it just takes a long time and you frustrate them right from the beginning. Same thing with any of the uses that you're going to have of your logo. You want it to be compressed and still be clear. Now, one exception is if you're blowing it up big, right? So if you're going to do something on a poster or a banner, or something like like on the street, like a billboard, something large. Anything that's going to be over like poster size is what's called a TIFF file, TIFF, and when you're buying it as a TIFF file, so say maybe you find a picture online or something like that that you want to use in your logo or something, you have to get it as a TIFF if you're going to use some kind of a picture or something like that, because the TIFF file is expandable out to any size, however large you want it, right? But other file types are not. So when I say file type, like I think when you do a picture, it's a .jpeg, right? So that file name extension has to be .tiff if you're going to use that file to expand it out for like billboard, posters, banners. So if you're doing any of that printing stuff, you have to do, it needs to be a .tiff if you're going to bring in some kind of a graphic or a photo, and sometimes those can be expensive. Like if you just built it yourself on a Photoshop or something like that, as long as there's no actual pictures, the text and stuff will expand and will be fine for a banner. But say if you're going to one of these places that sells all kinds of photos and things, 123RF is a good one to go and get photos. But you can't just take any photo and put it in something large like a billboard or a banner. It just won't work. Same thing like if you take a photo and you try and blow it up, like on your, you've got the zoom button and you zoom it out real wide, it starts to get pixelated, right? Well, that's what will happen if you try and take a regular size photo and put it on a billboard, right? It will become pixelated. So you have to get the right kind of file type. So anyways, being familiar with file types is important. Now, JPEGs will work for 90% of your marketing. But when you start getting to internet things, you even want to compress your file so that it's small, doesn't become a hindrance to people trying to pull it up. And the other thing that you want to do is that sometimes when people make a logo, they have it on like a white background or something. You want to have no background. So what I mean by that is, say if you've got a picture of a donkey, right, and that's your logo. Is it just the donkey, or is there a white square around the donkey or a white circle around the donkey, right? It's got to be just the image itself. And so there's a lot of software out there that helps you do that, but you want to get rid of that background. The reasons for that is, what if you want to put your donkey on your web page and your web page is blue, right? So it's a nice blue web page and you want to put your logo up there. Well, your donkey that you drew or that you bought the picture of has got a white square around it, right? So it's not just the donkey now, it's the donkey and the white square that it's in that has to go on your page. So you want to make sure that there's no background on your logo. It's just the logo itself, so that when you put it on the email, when you put it on something that has color, it just goes right over it nice and smooth instead of it being like a white square with a donkey in the white square, because then when you go to put that on something, it looks very unprofessional, right? So that's some things with the logo. As far as your on-page SEO optimization, so what does that mean? That means the things you can do within the page itself, right, to optimize your search engine, ranking, if you will, right? So how high you rank, how quickly you will be seen by your customers. So if they type in something, are you in the top 10, top 20, top 10,000? Where do you rank on your page? Is somewhat determined by how you set the page up, the content within the page, because these search engines only have so many things that they can go on to figure out what's in your page and whether you're a reliable company. And so one of the main things is the content. So I'm not going to go into too much in this. I'll highlight just a couple of things. But your textbook that I assigned for this class is very good at helping you to understand how Google operates and how some of this stuff goes. So let me just give you a couple of things. First one, these things are subject to change, right? That just because Google searches in one way today doesn't mean that when you go to set up your page in 4 months that they haven't made some changes, right? Because they're constantly evolving, because people are always trying to beat this system and come up with some way to always be at the top of Google's search, right? Because wouldn't that be great if you could always do that? Imagine if you sell, you sell socks, right? And you could come up with a way of tweaking the code so that no matter what anybody types in, your ad for socks, your sock web page is right there on the front page. They could type in something for weddings, and there's your sock page right at the top, and you're advertising everywhere then, right? So there's a lot of people that are interested in trying to be able to master Google's system so that they're always at the top, right? Doesn't matter what you're searching. If it gives me more exposure, I'd like to be at the top of every search if I could, right? Even if they're not really looking for me, at least I'm the first thing they saw, and it makes an impression, right? So there's a lot of companies that are really interested in trying to dominate search engine results, right? And so sometimes they come up with stuff, and they beat the system, so to speak, right? And so Google changes and says, okay, well, we can't look at that anymore because people are doing this, and it's kind of defeating the purpose of what we're trying to do, so we got to adjust, right? And so it's always important to go in to Google's Webmaster Guidelines, right? And that's where it tells you the latest rules and things on how they want you to set up your web pages for maximum optimization without interfering with the way that they have it intended to be, right? Okay. Next one, the page title is the first thing Google reads, right? So your page title, sometimes people skip right over that like it's not a big deal, but it is, because that's actually the first thing that Google indexes when they start looking for pages. The first thing they take into account is your page title, right? So it's very important that you choose your wording carefully, right? Keep in mind words like and, of, it, the. Those are words that Google doesn't look at, right? So it's just wasted time. You only got so many characters. It's normally 60-something characters will fit into the page title. So you can't just type forever. They limit what you can put in there. So you have to be careful with your words that you don't have too many dead words that are not getting counted, like thes and so's and it. You're going to have some of those just to make the sentence coherent, but you want to word it in such a way that you get maximum benefit. So you want to have some keywords and things like that in your page title that will help Google to put you with the right searches. Right? Okay. Meta description. The meta description. So when you're building your page, there's in the building part of it, there's a place where you can give the meta description of a page, right? And so in this meta description, think about whenever you click on like a Google search or something, right? And then let me see here if I can just do one for us real quick. So say sports, right? Okay. So when I get here on sports, this is my page title, right? And this stuff here is my meta description. So if I was to click on Fox Sports, I wouldn't find this meta description on there most likely anywhere, right? The meta description is something on the back end of the web pages. It's not actually seen when you click on it, but it is seen when someone searches, right? So that little paragraph of description that's underneath the title, so for each one of these they have something there, that's your meta description. So when you build the page, you type that in there, and search engines will use that as well to help figure out where you're going to end up on the search things. That's part of it. But then the other thing is, the reason you want that worded nicely is because that's what people see, right? When they've got your page heading, right? And even that you can see the ... so they don't get all of it in here. You've got your page heading, but then you've got this one sentence or two, right, where you can give a quick synopsis of what you are, and that really helps when people are scrolling through and they see the page heading. That may or may not tell them exactly what you are. This will help, and so it's not just for the search engine, but it's also for the people that are going to be searching for your stuff. Right. The next one, each page's title should be different because Google doesn't read duplicates, right? So when Google searches, it doesn't just search websites; it searches pages individually, right? And so if you have the same page title on each page, Google doesn't do the duplicate thing, right? So it's not going to help to do it anymore. So it's often better for each of the pages on your website to have a slightly different page, right? So that you show up more frequently. Slightly different page title so that you show up more frequently in Google searches. Avoid plagiarism, right? So I copy and pasted this whole thing from somewhere else where they were talking about avoiding no, I'm just kidding. But avoid plagiarism, right? You don't want to use somebody else's words because that will affect, that's kind of some red flag stuff too with Google and your search stuff. So if you're just copying and pasting somebody else's content, that can get you in all kinds of issues. So don't do that. Create your own content. Okay. And I think this is where we'll stop on this one, because in the next lesson I want to look at some specific things that we can do to drive some traffic. So that was kind of how to set up your page in such a way as to maximize traffic, but that's only part of the battle, right? You get a really well done page, but if you don't do the other things that we're going to talk about in the next lesson, you're not going to drive much traffic, right? So the well done page is important. That helps you to get higher in search results, right? But if nobody's searching for you, right, then that's a limiting factor as well. So we're going to talk about some other things in this next lesson that will get them looking specifically for you, right? Okay.